rich friends, Candace here, your revenue growth strategist. Of course, always showing you how to grow your revenue without using your labor. And I have to share some, that's how I feel about it. I feel like it's a great piece of information, but it's news that you definitely can use and you want to take heed to. So inside of this video, I want to share with you some really, I'm going to call them the two most important things you need to know right now about the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan that the SBA or the government gave out to businesses. So let's talk about them. Let's talk about what it is first. So the EIDL is, and I'm gonna call it the EIDL because saying Economic Injury Disaster Loan over and over again is just ridiculous to me. But anyway, EIDL, the whole purpose of it was for the government to be able to give money to businesses to keep them from closing, right? They were temporarily out of service, so many things going on due to COVID. So that program or loan was based around putting money in businesses' pockets to keep them from closing. That was the main purpose. Now, let's talk about the parts of that. So the EIDL was one piece, but then they called the other piece the advance, all right? Now, the advance portion of the EIDL is the portion that everyone calls, it's basically the grant, okay? We're gonna call it the grant portion of it, but the official term is advance. I'm giving you some knowledge here, all right? Just a little bit, making sure we're clear. Now, all this information can be found on sba.gov, but I want to make sure that I'm just sharing info that you want to make sure that you're knowing about, okay? So make sure you stay tuned, because this stuff right here, it can cost you a lot of money if you don't know it. So let's be clear. All right. So the grant portion, which was the advance, the grant portion, they gave you $1,000 per person that worked inside of your company. So if you had one employer, you were a sole proprietor, one employee, that's you by yourself, they would give you $1,000 as a grant, which means you don't have to pay it back. So this is the first important thing that I have to share with you today. I only have two, but the first most important thing you need to know is that the grant portion of the EIDL loan process, the advance portion, no, you don't have to pay it back, and it was $1,000 per person that'll, that worked for your company. But this is the piece that you may not have known. Are you ready? You have to pay taxes on the amount of the grant that you received. Yes. So let me tell you what I heard. I don't know any clients who did it. My clients did do this, right? But this is what I heard. I heard that people were going out and putting 10 employees on their advance portion because they knew that they would get $1,000 per employee, and they were giving up to 10 employees, which would be $10,000. Well, people were going out saying, oh yeah, I got 10 employees, and counting their mama, the sister, the 5 kids, right? I'm being serious. But people did that, right? So they put those numbers in the system, put it that they had all of these employees when they really didn't, but it doesn't even matter. I'm hoping they don't get caught, right? Has nothing to do with me. I'm just gonna move forward and tell you what happens now. So let's say that a person put 10 employees on their advanced portion, saying that that's how many people work for their company. Well, guess what? That will be $10,000 that they received, but that will also be $10,000 of taxable income that just got added to their tax return on next year's taxes. No, you can't just not file it because they're filing it with the IRS, so it'll be there. Regardless if you file it or not, you're gonna pay taxes on that money. So just know that, okay? So yes, the grant portion of the EIDL is taxable, and they will send you that 1099 at the first of the year. That's the first thing. Very, very important. Example, if you made $50,000, you put 10 as 10 employees, and you got a $10,000 grant, guess what? They're going to send you, that means they're going to send that 1099. So now, instead of just making $50,000 from you and your job and your income, you will add that $10,000, meaning you'll be now taxed on $60,000 worth of income. Now, granted, because you have a great business and you understand how things work and that you use that money for different expenses and stuff, you will be able to take your regular business deductions. Not saying you can't. I'm just wanting to be very clear that that portion, that grant portion, is taxable, and make sure that you're looking for those documents at the first of the year, okay? So that's the first piece. It's taxable. The grant is wonderful. You don't have to pay it back, but you will pay taxes on it, and I'm okay with that, right? Fine. that taxable amount, and some people will say, well, what's the percentage? It depends on your actual tax bracket and where you are, which will mean how much you're taxed on that money on, okay? So with that, let's go to number 2, the second thing. All right, so the second thing you need to know about the EIDL that's super, super important is that, of course, it is a loan. No portion of the EIDL can be forgiven. That's not that program, and that's the PPP, and we'll talk about that on another video. Make sure you do me a favor though, subscribe, click that button, subscribe, and make sure that you look at all the great information that I share on a regular basis, so that you can be educated and know exactly what's going on really with anything related to tax and finance. All right, so here we go, let's keep going. Subscribe though, make sure you click that button. Okay. So the EIDL is a loan, okay? Now with the loan, they did a whole lot of great provisions. It's like 12 months of no payment, so you may have gotten the loan and then you don't have to make payments for the 12 months. It's a really low interest rate, about 3.5% interest, so it's super low, so it's cheap money is what we would call it. Wonderful, but let me tell you something. Are you ready? The fact that you don't have payments is great, but know that you are still accruing interest on that loan, even though you're not paying interest, even though you're not making payments for 12 months. So let's be very clear. Accruing interest, what does that mean, Candace? Those are accounting words. Let me help you. The money's still growing. You're still paying interest on the loan, and the loan is still accruing or growing in interest while you're waiting and holding on to your money, whatever you're doing with it, right? Doesn't matter, it's still doing it, so it's still growing. So what is interest? Let's just be very clear. Interest is the penalty you pay for the right to own something in advance that you cannot afford. Now let's be clear, we know it's a lot going on. I'll just tell you what interest is, right? At this time, you want to borrow money. They're going to allow us to borrow money, but in order to borrow money, they're going to charge you interest to borrow the money. Interest is the penalty amount. It's not even the principal or the amount that you borrowed. So let's say you borrowed $40,000 with the EIDL process, right? You needed the money, you need to keep your business going. Wonderful. That $40,000 at a 3.5 interest rate is really low, cheap money. But guess what? That $40,000 is going to be increased over the next year because that 3.5% is still accruing on that $40,000 every month. Yeah, are you catching what I'm putting down? So that means that when it's time to make your payments, you won't no longer owe $40,000. You'll owe $40,000 plus the 3.5 interest rate that was accruing or growing over those months that you were not making payments. So what am I saying? I can't tell you what to do. It's not my money, it's your money, right? But I need to make sure you know that if you're not making payments, regardless, that interest is still growing, and I would highly recommend you go ahead and start making payments back. If you don't need the money, stop holding it, give it back. If you don't need it, give it back. If, let's even say this, let's say you say, well, Candace, I don't need it now, but I may need it, right? Do me a favor, start making payments out of that account so you just start paying it back as you go, and your interest won't be as much because you're making the payments now. I had to share this with you because a lot of times people are getting this money and they don't really know what the implications are, what happens when you get this money and how it works against you if you don't know the rules. Again, I tell you all the time, if you don't know the rules to the game, that's just like going to a basketball game with a football. Now, LeBron James is super great. I heard that he can shoot a football in the hoop, but we all know that you need a round ball to go into the basketball hoop. If you're real basic like me, you know, back in my prime, I used to play ball. No, just okay. All right, so here we go. Let's do a recap. Make sure you got it. The first thing you need to know is that the advance or the grant portion of the EIDL loan it's a grant, okay? It's the grant portion. It's not gonna be required to be paid back, but you will be taxed on it, all right? Number two, second thing you need to know is that the EIDL loan is a loan. You have to pay it back, of course. It has a really low interest rate, but that interest rate is in effect right now. As soon as you get it, it goes into effect. And although you're not required to make payments, do what you desire, right? Even though you're not required to make payments, the interest is still growing, and know that the interest is not the amount that you actually borrowed, it's the penalty for you borrowing the money. and that's going to go every single month. So I just wanted to be very clear. I wanted to share these very important things about the EIDL loan process, and not really even the process, just the process after you've gotten the money, right? To really understand how this works and how it's going to affect you, and being very important of how it affects you. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Make sure you do me a favor, subscribe, tune in, even comment below. I'd love to get your comments about this information. If you have questions, you have our info, comment below, connect with us. You can always find us on all of our social media channels, of course, and our website. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And guess what? We'll see each and every one of you at the top. You know the rest. Y'all have a great one.